And so when I made the career decision, my first job out of college was at NASA. And it was as a mathematician. They said, oh, yes, you always wanted to work for NASA. Well, actually, I didn't. But I met a man and was going to get married. And I had an old car. It was a Dodge 225 Slant 6. And I needed a new master cylinder and a new radiator. So he said I needed to get a job because I had to get a car and have a car note, and he wasn't going to pay my car note. So I had to get, that was the first husband.
Right there we know. Right there we know a lot of data.
Yeah. Every girl needs a do-over.
Yeah. I like that. Every girl needs a do-over. Yeah. I like it.
Yeah, he was good, but it was a do-over. It's like, okay, all right.
Well, they're just the practice one, you know. Yeah, they're the practice one. Yeah.
So I said, okay, I didn't really want to work because I loved math. I wanted to go to graduate school. I wanted to get a PhD in math. I wanted to be a professional student. This is what I just wanted to keep studying it and looking at seashells and just all this stuff like that. I wanted to be like the old Greek philosophers that studied classics and Latin and science and just didn't do anything but think.
For an introvert, that would probably be a great career. You know,
I lived my life in my head.
Yeah.
It's great. I had to work. So
you had to do a car payment, and he wasn't going to pay the car payment. Yeah, and a girl's got to do what a girl's got to do.
Yeah. So they had they had a career fair at college, and I forced myself to go in there. And the one thing that caught my eye was this man was looking for mathematicians that had IBM assembler language and Fortran. And I said, hey.
I'm your girl. I'm your girl. And I got to take a note payment on a Dodge.
So it was only me. It was only me and this other guy. We were the only two people who could possibly get it. So I said, okay, well, I'll look at that. And so then after I finished talking to him, I didn't really feel like looking for a job. And so the NASA, right next to NASA was NRC, Nuclear Regulatory Commission. So I stopped there, and then I said, that's it, I'm not going anywhere else. So I only got to the two ends that were there, because it was like right in the middle, and then I left. So I got the call from NASA to come and be a mathematician. So I started as a GS7 mathematician.
What do you do all day as a GS7 mathematician?
Yeah, that's a good question, wasn't it? So I was a systems programmer. That's what I was. So at the time, they had these, great, fantastic computers called IBM 360s.
Were those like they took up the whole floor of the building
yes.
in those days? Yeah, that they're raised and there's air conditioning underneath and these built.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so a systems programmer is a programmer's programmer. So we work on things like the compilers, the assemblers, making sure the editors, when you go in to create a file, and to make sure it actually works. So today's analogy would be the people who write Microsoft Word or Excel. We write the things that people use to write things. So that was the programmer's
brains behind the brains.
Yeah, so, but I was only there a year and a half. And so that husband was from Seattle, so he wanted to move back home to Seattle. So I left, and and we both looked for jobs, and I found a job as a weapons systems management development program engineer.
Party girl.
Yeah. So I had to learn about undersea warfare, torpedoes, submarines.
Because it's not enough to fight it on the ground. You need to fight it under the water. Yeah.
And so I quit the job I loved. I loved working for NASA and for Goddard Space Flight Center, and I loved being a systems programmer. But my husband wanted to go to Seattle, and this job would take me to Seattle and take me to all the places that he longed to go to, which was Monterey, California, and San Diego, and those Navy facilities, activities that he wanted to go to. He wasn't in the Navy, but he liked California, and there was a lot of California stops. I got there. I hated every single minute that I was in. I hated every second.
Why?
It was my first time away from home. Washington, D.C. is nothing like Seattle.
This is true. This is true.
didn't even have a radio station. The radio, there was only one radio station that played my kind of music. I called it the Sweat Hogs radio station because it was run by a high school. And it only went from sun up to sundown, and then sundown it went off the air.
Because you have to go home and do homework.
Right,
Yeah.
and so it was students. I called it Sweat Hogs. It was literally. The old TV show Welcome Back, Kotter, they had a radio station. They did stupid, goofy stuff. And that's what this radio station was like, just high school kids, right? But they played the music I wanted to hear. So I went there. It was rainy. It was cloudy. I hated undersea warfare. I had no interest in torpedoes. I had no interest in submarines. And I wasn't treated well. I was the first African-American person in the program.
Really?
Yes, and I washed out because it was just, I went, this was my first kind of like treatment, bad treatment in life, I would say. And I had never been treated in such a negative way because of where I came from. Howard University is a very safe environment. DC Public Schools is a very safe environment. And even staying in Washington, D.C. was very safe. So going out there was just it's such a cruel world still today. But I got that. And I was alone in a marriage that wasn't all that strong. And I didn't
When you're
know.
alone
Yeah.
in a bad marriage, that's a kind of alone that I don't think being alone with somebody that you're alone from is the worst kind of alone than being alone.
Right.
And I think a lot of people experience that. And it sounds like a perfect storm was brewing, that this marriage didn't have and you were not supposed to be there. That's not, what you're supposed to be doing.
I commuted, I lived in Seattle because I just needed to live in the city at least, and to the job, which was in Keyport, Washington, a little teeny little town, about that big. And I drive a half an hour to the ferry, take the ferry for a half an hour, and then drive for half an hour.
Oh,
so
wow.
I had an hour and a half one way, so a 3-hour commute every day.
Dreading going to work, an hour and a half dreading what you're doing.
The days are shorter. I hardly saw the sun. I finally got, there was this one day that you talked about turning points. So there was this turning point, and I remembered that it goes down in my book for one of the worst days of my life. And I had made this decision that I was getting out of this program. And what it was I had to go and to a torpedo range and watch them range a torpedo, which is shoot it and then watch it and then take down some data and test it. I took a half an hour on the ferry, a half an hour drive, half an hour on the ferry, get over there, and then had to go and then I don't know my Navy ships, so it was a boat. And I think it was a frigate, I'm not sure. And I'm dressed for success, right? I have a suit on and heels and a leather coat. And of course my skirt's too tight. And it's high tide, and I couldn't get up on the ship. Because I had to, gap my legs really wide and take a big step on it, and my skirt was too tight, so I couldn't get up on the ship. And so the guys are sitting there, they're laughing at me. And so finally, a group, they just kind of have to get up and they have to pull me on board because I can't step on. There's no gangplank, so I had to.
Wow.
So I had to, jump over the gap that was going like this. The shore is here, and the boat is here, so I had to get up that high. So I get on, go to somewhere in, I don't know, the Strait of Juan de Fuca, somewhere it's just water. Go to some place, take a seaplane, go there, watch the torpedo range, which is a blip, blip, blip on a, just watching screen, blip, blip, blip. Okay, that's fine. My feet hurt by now. And reverse it all on come back on a smaller boat, seaplane, smaller boat, which was about this wide, really. And then we were going really fast, and all the sea spray was coming in on my new, nice leather coat. And then I get back to the dock, get to my car, get on the ferry, and I remember looking over. Normally I would go in and look at TV or something like that. So I stayed outside, and I was looking over the rail out in Puget Sound, watching the water, thinking, this is the worst day of my life. It's the worst day. I was sick of water. I had spent a whole day doing everything that I just totally hated, every single second, and all this water. And then I decided that I was just quitting that program. So I quit it. I didn't
So
quit
you
my
left
job.
the water and you went to space.
Eventually.
Yeah.
Eventually, I went. I left the job. We got divorced. Came back here to D.C. Went to Department of Justice. Went to Department of Energy. Went to ATF, and then went back to NASA. So I took a long walk down the beach to get back to where I am today.
One thing that's really interesting is in your personality, you're very analytical, and you use mathematical skills, and you do assessments. And we had this conversation about, I said, but how did you get from the work you were doing here to be the CIO? I mean, that's a whole different set of capability. You need additional skills that you don't necessarily go. Let's talk a little bit about when you said, okay, I'm here, but I want to go here. Let's talk about that, because I think it's fascinating how you made that decision and analyzed it, and you assessed.
When I came back from Seattle, I worked as a systems programmer again. And so very analytical, technical kind of job. And I sort of moved around to learn new things, new technologies.
And when you came back, you went to Department of Justice. Was this
Right.
where this happened? Okay, you're
Right.
Department of Justice. All right.
And so I got to be a technical expert. So I was an expert in my field. And so then after you're an expert, sort of, if you want to move up, you have to go into management. So I looked at management more, instead of looking at systems and computer systems, look at systems of people, things like that. So I started to look at things like that, and then I got management experience in different jobs, moving around. I zigzagged like this, going up. Then I decided that I wanted to go into the executive ranks, and so in order to do that, what kind of skills did I need to improve? And so I decided to apply for a senior executive job, so I would have to go write the essay to that, and I could look at the gaps. This is what I did. I looked at the gaps in my experience. I noticed that I had gaps in building coalitions, which required networking with people. So that means that I would have had to know that guy's name in college.
Oh, there's a gap. When I'm in a class with just one other person, knowing their name.
It's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can understand 30 people, but one other person.
If I knew one, that would be, it didn't matter, 30 or
That was
one.
100% increase. If you
Yeah.
knew one, it was 100%.
Right. So I had to change this about myself. And as a systems programmer, I'm heads down working. But I had to lift my head up a bit to go into management because I had systems of people to manage, not systems of programs. And so I started to lift my head up a bit then. And then in some of the core competencies in the senior executive rank did require building coalitions, communicating, building teams, and business acumen. So to go from technical to more the business kind of side. And then having networks of people to draw on, that's really new to me. So I had to start putting myself in situations where I would do that, and which is very uncomfortable situations to do that. One example of how I did that, I went to the Federal Executive Institute, and they had a 4-week program for aspiring senior executives. And I decided that I would stretch in every way, that I would do, nobody knew me, right? I was still going to bother knowing anybody's name. I really still don't, really. So I could be, no one would know me. If I embarrassed myself, nobody would see it. It didn't matter. So I was going to do that stretch. I was going to do the networking. So I wasn't going to worry about being a geeky little girl or whatever, because if I messed up, it wouldn't matter. So I felt a lot of freedom.